Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 4, Episode 19 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. Should come out on November the 22nd, 2021, and that is the closest we're going to get to Thanksgiving, so we're just going to call this the Thanksgiving episode. And I don't really know why. Thanksgiving, that wonderful time in America where we celebrate taking land and a whole nation from a group of people that were indigenous to it. But I mean, it's not like the rest of the world doesn't operate that way anyways. But there's still positive things that you can have out of that. But today, what we're going to talk about is my apple cider recipe. I was teaching someone, a friend of the family's, how to make cider and wine. And so we made I guess this is over 7%, so it's an apple wine. It's not like real high ABV, but but we were teaching someone how to make some apple cider. Still my cider, my CIDR, the network term, but she called it the basic bitch. Nice little pink label that my wife designed and put on there. But what we're going to do is we're looking at the one that is carbonated versus the one that's not carbonated. Spoiler, they're both carbonated. One of them just was intended to be carbonated, and the other one was not. So, Ricky, you're drinking one. I'm gonna let you take a sip of the other one and see if you can tell a difference, and then we can kind of talk about it. I mean, we've talked about this recipe before, so this isn't so much a review as just kind of what we experienced with the Carb v no carb. So, what do you think?
Okay, I would guess the second one's the one that's carbonated.
That is correct. Yep. This one right here, right? Yeah, that is correct. That's the one that's carbonated. What tipped you off?
Really the heaviness of the carbonation. They're both carbonated, you're right, but the first one, much smaller bubbles, much lighter.
Yeah.
The second one, incredibly carbonated. I mean, like, you can feel the large bubbles on your tongue.
Yeah.
Like, as I was drinking it, I felt like half of my tongue was not touching the cider. It just had the carbonation on it.
It's crazy carbonated, right? So, when we put this in, we put it in at 1.002.
Okay.
So, it's not like it had a lot of sugar left in it, and it has molasses in it. And it didn't go like to 0.009 or 0.099 or whatever. Or it didn't go to that.
Yeah.
So it's not like completely dry, right? But it's still dry.
Yep.
Both of them are dry, and the weirdness is, I think, this is a cider we've made many times before. I generally don't back sweeten it. You back sweeten it sometimes. It's never quite been this carbonated before, though.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very heavily carbonated. I mean, even the one that was quote unquote uncarbonated, the one you didn't put the carb tabs in. I mean, it's almost the same level of carbonation I would expect that you had. I mean, like, it's a full carbonation. It's not like it's really light or there's just a couple bubbles. Like, it's fully carbonated, and the other one is just a whole other level of carbonated. Yeah, which is not bad. I mean, it's not like neither one of these tastes bad. They're both kind of nice and dry, a little bit funky, which you like. Kind of, you like that in a lot of apple ciders where it's got that bit of sourness to it. Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, have you taken an ABV reading of it after it's come out?
Yeah, they're both they're both at 10% roughly. The percentage didn't change. They did not change in gravity either. They're both at like 1.
Yeah,
which is what they.
They will have to have changed gravity a little bit because they continue to ferment afterwards.
I realized that, but I didn't measure the carbonated. I don't know what the.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's what I was asking. Have you taken an experiment bottle and like poured it in, shook all the gas out of it, and seen what the ABV of it is now?
Yeah, I did. One of the carbonated bottles. I have no idea about this one is, just because I don't know, but it went in at 1. And somehow carbonated itself. So I must have like either had a whole bunch of pedaling gases in there.
I wouldn't think so, because I mean your gas concentration is not going to get higher when it's in there. I mean most likely it just kept going. because a lot of wines can, a lot of yeast can go down to 0.990.
Yeah.
So that's still like a whole point of gravity left over.
Yeah.
So I mean that could have just been what happened. It's gone. The molasses will keep it tasting a little bit sweet, so it doesn't have that like super dry characteristic. But yeah, that'd be something I'd be interested in to see, like, what is the ABV now? How much further did it keep going?
Yeah. Well, you know what we could do? We could like go downstairs, take one of these bottles. I still have a whole bunch of them that are the non-carbonated ones, and just pour it out and let it sit in a glass for like with some muslin cloth over it. Overnight.
Yeah, exactly. Just let it get back up to room temperature. See what it's like.
Yeah, see what it's like. Well, they're all room temperature, so I just pour it out and let the carbonation come out. But yeah, it's so weird, which is one of the fun things that I love about this. This is a brew that I'm intimate with. I might have made this 40 times so far. Now Ricky's getting the every time I'm like, oh sorry, I bumped the I hit the
got
mic.
the headset on now. Never knew. I even did a whole thing where I moved where the microphone like pop filter was, and now I just bumped it with my foot.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I mean it happens to both of us. That's why I'm very specific about the way I move now too.
Well, now I just know for like the last several months, like exactly what you've been saying about. It's like, oh, the mic, and I was like, that probably doesn't show up that much. Like,
yeah.
It does.
Yeah, it does. It's
absolutely.
like, thump, thump, thump. And I don't cut them out because I do it. If this wasn't for like fun and I was trying to make a career of it and everything like that, I'd be really particular about that stuff, right? But this is supposed to be just for fun. If anything ever happened with this, it wouldn't be because we were trying to be these like superstars, right? We're just sitting here having a conversation, drinking a few beers and talking about stuff that we like to talk about. So anyways, yeah, we bump the mic all the time, and we don't take it out because I think it's kind of fun to let you guys see like how much of a screw up we are professionally. But yeah, back to the cider. This is one of the things that I love about brewing. I can take something that I've made 100 times, make it the exact same way, and it'll have like a little bit of a difference because I'm not doing it in a completely 100% controlled environment, and I may like have gotten a batch of yeast. This is the Safal yeast that we use every time.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was SO4. And, every time I make it, it just ends up being like this. But it never carbonates. Like, it's never carbonated right. I've tried to carbonate it multiple times, and this is the first time it's ever... And now I'm
You
like...
did it when you didn't plant it. There you go.
I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I might, the next time I make a 5-gallon batch of this, I may take and carbonate half of it and hop half of it, half of that carbonated half, and see what ends up happening, and not hop the other half. So do it in split into fours. Do one that is just no carbonation, no hops. One that's hopped with carbonation. One that is hopped without carbonation, and one that's carbonated with no hops. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So because that sounds like that would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
To play with. Yeah. Change it up a little bit. Then it'd be like bitter cider and.
Well, some of the most popular ciders, like you look at things like Blake's, which that's huge in almost every store in America.
Yeah.
It's not everyone's favorite, but it's out there, and that's one of those like sour bitter.
That's true.
Sort of ciders.
Yeah. Well, enough fawning over cider that I made. Let's talk about the more brewing, the Buckwheat Coffeemel that we're making.
Yeah.
All right. So you've had the buckwheat honey. You've tasted what it's like when it's still a little sweet, not completely dry. Which I'm going to tell you, that point of gravity difference. You can tell it's drier, but you can't really tell the difference in sweetness. But now it's got coffee in it. You haven't tasted the two together, but you've tasted the coffee and you've tasted the buckwheat. What are your thoughts?
I think they'll really complement well because that coffee already has a little bit of nuttiness. It's not like too out there, but it's a nice kind of like mellow base. It's a very smooth coffee with just that little bit of earthy, nutty undertone, then just hit with that buckwheat honey, which is just so in your face with that nutty flavor.
Yep.
I think that'll go real well. I mean, I think all things said and done, when you take that out of there, it will almost have this sort of like walnut, hazelnut sort of flavor to it, even though none of that stuff is in there.
Yep. And it's completely dry. So the other coffee mels that I made have either been sweet on purpose and kind of citrusy, or sweet by accident. And they've always been very acidic. And there, I just put my hand in front of the mic. But they've always been a little bit like too acidic. So I'm hoping that this one is going to be nice and rounded and taste a little bit more like the Stumpton's coffee that we're using in it. And that's already got like a bit of a caramel taste to it. So it's like nutty and a little bit sweet. When you have it, like, especially if you put like some cream or something in it, it brings out those flavors a whole lot. By itself, it's really good. But I haven't made that, so I've held off on making that into a cold brew because I don't want to know what that's going to taste like until I try it in the brew, because I don't want to have formed an opinion about it, because this is an experimental batch and I kind of want to just see what it's going to be like. So I'm doing a slightly different methodology, you know, of thinking through this time. But I predict, based on the way that the buckwheat honey tastes, and based on the way that the Stumpton's coffee tastes, I think the two of them together is going to be like this perfect marriage for like a Coffeemel. So, yeah. And then maybe if we back sweeten it, you know, like we'll make sure it stays at the level that it's at. Because I think we use Lavin D47. It's already like 16% ABV, 15. It's like high up there because it was like a really high ABV. I thought it was going to stop because it's past the yeast tolerance. For the yeast was just like, nah, I'm just gonna keep on going, man. I got some roids.
You can sometimes get an extra percent or two because really that ABV is stopping reproduction. So you've probably got until the existing yeast have kind of run their life cycle.
Probably true. But yeah. So I don't know if you heard about this, but Logitech killed the Harmony line.
Oh, really? No,
yeah. So they're not going to be making it anymore. They've got some company that's going to continue to do maintenance, but they're not going to like make the remotes anymore. They're going to sell them out. And of course, I have been using Logitech Harmonies for years. I got the Harmony remote for my family to use downstairs. I use the app. I have two hubs in my house. I have one that controls my TV set in my office, and I have one that controls like the downstairs entertainment center for the family. And I've always kind of liked them. They've been really good. But now they're gone.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do?
We can see how well the maintenance company actually runs them. See if they'll actually hold up.
I kind of want to do something else.
Okay.
I want to find something that's not beholden to a company and their software updates and all the other things. I mean, I want it to get security updates and things like that if it's attached to the internet. But maybe I could find something that's either not attached to the internet or that, will hold a ton of like all the items that I need.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of like right now I've got like 3 because all the rest of the ones like kind of don't meet that criteria. There's the BROADLINK RM4 Pro Hub. Now that's still going to be a little bit more like the Logitech. It's going to be tied to that company. But BROADLINK is a little more open, I think, than Logitech. Now they're still a company.
Yeah.
I'm not like, saying that I trust them or anything like that. But maybe that would be a good experience for a couple of years, and it's like $30.
Yeah, and they've got a lot less division in that company, right? Like the thing that ends up burning people when companies retire products is because they run so many products. Just for that company to stay viable, they got to clean them out every now and then.
Right.
Take the quote-unquote low performers and drop those off. When you're looking at a company that's a bit smaller, fewer products, they're more likely to hold on to those things because you're not going to drop something that's like a fourth of your company. Yeah.
And all that BROADLINK does right now is home automation stuff, from what I understand. But it's like $40 to get one of these RM4 Pro like hubs, and I mean even like 2 of them plus like a remote to control it or whatever would cost less than one of the Harmony remotes that I bought,
Mm-hmm.
not the remote and the hub at the
Yep,
same
yeah.
time. Yeah, so that might be worth it. The other one is this thing called the SofaBaton. SofaBaton. U1. I'm not sure. I never heard of the company before, but I was just doing some, and it's almost like the BROADLINK, but it's a little bit cheaper, and it comes with a remote and a hub that goes to
Okay.
it. So it's all app controlled. And then the final one is back to analog, no updates. I hate this stuff. I'm just getting rid of it. It's just it's like a $8 GE backlit universal remote, and you just like program it with whatever you want it to have in it,
Okay.
and use
Yep.
it. The problem with that one is it only does 4, and it doesn't do like scenes and stuff like that.
Okay.
So probably gonna buy maybe all 3 of them. I don't know. Like, should I buy all 3 of them?
They're pretty low price points, so it's not like you couldn't get them all and just try them out, see what you like.
Yeah, I mean, I could also like resell one or something like that if I wanted to. Yeah, I guess, and it makes good content for us to talk about on the podcast that's got to do with technology and not brewing.
Yeah.
Which actually, speaking of that, I wonder if I could use a remote to control like a temperature vessel for my brewing, or if I could do some sort of home automation.
Oh yeah.
to,
Oh, I'm
like,
sure you could. There's plenty of stuff out there that you can hook into.
So I'm thinking about doing this crazy thing where I get a floating hydrometer that goes in my brew, and then I get like a floating dip tube also, and I pressure ferment, and then do a closed transfer to another vessel for like beers and like carbonated like ciders and things like that. I'm thinking about doing something crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit.
Well, but I was wondering like if I could, so I said control, but be able to monitor. So like I was wondering if I could do something where I have like a key combination that I press on something or I bring up, and it shows me in real time what the what the gravity, the current ABV, the temperature inside the vessel, and like a couple other things like
Yeah.
that are.
Yeah, I mean, like ultimately, those sensors have to report that data back somewhere, and you're storing it for some automation like that to work. So I think on like the remote end, yeah, absolutely, you're really just switching to wherever you're aggregating that data.
Yeah. So like put a Raspberry Pi with Home Assistant on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Pull that information in, put it into a database, maybe, like a MariaDB or a MongoDB
Yeah.
or something.
Might not even need that, right? Because I mean, I guess it depends on how interested you are. If you want all the historical data, yeah,
I
you'll
want
need
the
to store it.
historical data.
Okay.
I want to know, like last time I did this brew, did it do like what it did? Did I change the environmental factors and stuff like that? I don't know why. Like, I shouldn't, but I feel crazy. Like,
Yeah. Well, I was more thinking, like, even if you wanted something like that, when you're looking at final results, you can just record those wherever. I was thinking more, you've got those sensors. I don't know how often they update. Let's say they update every 30 seconds. If you want to know every 30 seconds across the 2-week brew period, yeah, you'll want a database for that. Otherwise, just check it when you want it. If there's a data value you care about, record it.
yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to talk about that. That might be a project for us to do together. We'll see. So let's talk about health tracking apps. That's our last topic for the day. So I don't think you did start doing the VIDA app, right? You looked into it.
I looked into it. We haven't started it yet.
Okay.
But I did use one of their competitors for like a year.
All right.
We were on the other insurance.
So through our current insurance, we can get this thing called VIDA, and it's like a life coach and health tracking app, and they'll do things like, measuring your intake of food and stuff like that. It's all kind of free stuff that you get with things like the Apple, health tracker app or the Google Fit thing. Have you tried, because I know you have a Fitbit. I have an Apple Watch, right? Have you tried like the Fitbit health tracking?
Oh yeah,
That's
absolutely.
got no like life coach portion kind of built into it. What do you think of that? Like how do you feel?
I
like
really
that
like
works
them. I know they're not perfectly accurate, and neither are any of the watches. I mean, even
Yeah.
the best watches are still up to like 20% inaccurate. So, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But the trending is what I really like, because if I see, week over week, my resting heart rate is dropping, I'm knowing, okay, The cardio workouts I'm doing, those are working because my resting heart rate's getting lower, so my heart's getting stronger. And I love it for the sleep tracking because I can't track my sleep because I'm asleep. I use them less for like calories and stuff because I kind of know how many calories I'm eating. I've dieted enough to have a good feel for how much calories are in certain things and how much I need to be eating. With the intermittent fasting stuff that I do, it doesn't matter as much anyway. But all those other little things, like I've got it's not the VIDA, it's the new thing. It's not the Versa, the Lux, the Fitbit ones.
Lux,
yeah, which is one of their newer ones. It's got like the skin temperature monitors and tries to calculate your O2 and all that stuff. And those things I really enjoy because that's not something I can easily get myself. That's like data that you really need the wearable to track for you. And tracking that like quality and sleep and stuff is really useful for me because like most of my insomnia is gone now. I only have maybe one night a month I can't sleep or less.
I envy you.
I know. It was so bad a couple of years ago, and I went through this like hard reset with it. And I think the fasting helped a little bit with that, but that's just speculation. But being able to like watch it and be like, okay, yeah, last night was pretty rough. I should go to bed earlier tonight. Because, I would know that I spent 45 minutes tossing and turning, not actually asleep. Because you don't remember those things when you wake up for a minute at a time at night as you roll over. So being able to track that stuff and then make decisions on like, okay, what am I going to do differently to try and get that number to be better is pretty powerful.
As a diabetic, I find that all my privacy concerns, I feel so violated when I think about this stuff. Like, because there's some company out there that's pulling this in and they're using my personal information to be able to try to sell stuff to me. And that's not cool, right? Especially when it's like you're kind of like taking advantage of someone or someone needs this thing, to be able to really be healthy. And you're using that as a way to make more money. That's kind of disgusting, right? Like everyone needs to make money, right? But when you're ultra wealthy and you're preying on people who, like not me, but like other people who barely have anything and they need this stuff to be able to survive and you're not like being generous to them, that's kind of being, yeah. Don't be Bob. Bob's a jerk. Be like Don. Don's nice, So I have those like qualms with it, but having used all three of these services, and there's other services that do these things, I do find them immeasurably useful, and I keep bumping the mic with my foot. I'm trying not to. I find them immeasurably useful for stuff, and I wish I'd had this, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, when I really needed something like this to kind of keep me from becoming diabetic or keep me from like getting to this point that I've had some health problems or whatever, and not the nagging reminders, but just being able to look at it and say, okay, my blood sugar is 121 right now, and yesterday it was 111, and last night it was 145, and when I woke up this morning it was 176. And I took my medicine and I did all the things and I've tracked it and I've been able to go down to, and the reason that I think that this is happening is because I ate a banana before bed. And even though that's supposed to be good because it has a ton of fiber, the sugar content in it's too much for my body to handle, like things like that. And I don't eat bananas before I go to bed. I'm just like making like a silly example, but things like that happen to people. And so I think these things are useful, but man, like, the marketing stuff that goes into this stuff to like, it is so incessantly evil that I kind of don't want to do it. Like, especially with like the Google and the Apple stuff, maybe. I mean, Apple's not the good guy. Google isn't either. And I have like some home automation and stuff that ties into some of those companies. And I'm like sitting here thinking, what in the world?
Yeah, I can say from the Fitbit end, I'm sure they're collecting all that data. I'm sure they're doing something with it.
They're absolutely.
But I've never been targeted in like an obvious way in terms for like advertiser trying to sell me something. That's been really good with them. That's probably because they don't really tie into any platform. They can try and sell you something.
Now that Google owns them, they're just collecting the data. They have not done anything with Fitbit yet to make it do something.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm sure Fitbit was gathering it years ago though before they got acquired.
They
you
were,
know.
but Fitbit was, so just like kind of knowing about this stuff. Google has a different mission than Fitbit does when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, it's a valid point that any of these health trackers that pull this data have to pull this data. They all store this data because you get historical data about it.
Mm-hmm.
So all that stuff is there and it's targeted at you, and they have it.
Yep.
And you got to make that decision of, does the benefit of you also having the data outweigh the negative of them also having the data?
I think for me it does. For you it might not, because but maybe you are unhealthy enough that it is, but it shouldn't be. That shouldn't be the choice that we're having to make. I can live, but I'll sell my soul.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. When you hit a point that you've got serious medical concerns, that there's a real detriment for me not to have this thing, it's a little bit more insidious. It's a little bit more, maybe there needs to be a more open platform for this stuff. But in terms of if you're fairly healthy, no real existing medical issues, just having that little bit of push really helps. Mine's charging right now. My wife took hers off and she hasn't worn it for a week. I'm trying to get her to put hers back on.
Yeah.
Because when it's just there to do that little oh, you haven't gotten your steps this hour. And it's oh, okay, yeah, I got 10 minutes before the hour's over. I should get up and stretch a little bit. That little stuff that you don't think about when you're just in the middle of your day because it's just in the back of your mind. It brings that stuff up for you, which really helps.
I mean, if you've got healthy relationships also with things like food or you've got unhealthy relationships in some ways, but healthy thought processes around those things, not a mental health issue with it, then it can also be really helpful to do things like weight tracking or step tracking, like you had mentioned, or, calories aren't everything. Calorie and weight have a close correlation to one another, but you can kind of tie those things together and see how that's gonna affect you. But anyways, we've talked long enough. It's time to end this episode. Not that I'm shutting you down. Actually, do you have anything else that you want to say?
No, I think I've
that?
said all I need to.
All right, so this is season 4, episode 19 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. It's supposed to come out around Thanksgiving of 2021. We'll see if I actually don't screw that up, but it should come out the Monday before. Otherwise, if you're in America, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We have a Patreon and a Twitter, and we'd love for you to engage with us there. That'd be great. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time.